So I am really excited to talk about how we can work in local governments. First, I just want to acknowledge, because this is about climate change right now. Representative Curtis earlier compared the earth to our bodies. And as I've been breathing the smoke from wildfires for the past few weeks, been reading about hurricanes and the derecho, I've been thinking about the earth as a body. And it seems to me that we've heated up the Earth's climate system. We've added this energy to it, and now she's convulsing, like she's got fever or chills. Just like an infection, we've kind of thrown this natural system off of balance. And the disruption that we're seeing now is like a body grappling with sickness. And those are big things. The global climate is a lot, and I'm talking about what we do in our local cities. But I think it matters. For me, faith is a driving force. It's the motivator, even when something seems really big and impossible to grapple with, like climate change. I hope for positive change, and I act in the belief that I can create consequences. I'm not acting out of fear or anger. It's faith and love. And I love my community, my home here. I love my family, and I love my neighbors. I love my fellow congregants, both in my LDS ward, at the little Episcopal church here in Provo. We support and edify each other. We mourn with each other, and we work together. And it's working together in the local level that we're able to make changes that affect our lives, and those small changes can aggregate to do good things. And the last motivation I have is a sense of responsibility and gratitude. For all that I've learned, all of the skills that I've gained come with them the responsibility to help others. In the LDS Church, one of the covenants that we make with God is to dedicate everything we have to the building of the kingdom of God. And I believe that we build that kingdom on earth, here where we live in our communities, that we work to renew the earth, and that we work to make sure that its bounteous resources are available to all people. And I think this obligation has permeated my view of the world and my responsibility to it, as well as a strong sense that I need to serve in my community. So Ben Abbott earlier talked about individual choices that we make, things like biking, about eating less meat. Representative Curtis talked about not driving to church if you could walk instead. I'm interested in how we shape our cities to help support these healthier choices that are good for individuals, communities, and the environment. A big thing are the local codes, zoning and land use especially. These things create the legal infrastructure that in turn shape the physical infrastructure that we walk through every day. Now, just before me, Tom mentioned the building code. You know, what are the guidelines for how we build our buildings, how efficient they are. But with zoning, we get to think about how dense our communities are. Do we have a house on an acre, or do we have 10 houses on an acre? Or are we doing multifamily developments in one area? Is mixed use allowed? Or is all shopping removed from the areas where people actually live? How our neighborhoods are organized, whether or not we have accessible grocery shops, whether our streets are set up as complete streets that you can walk on and bike on, or if they're set to prioritize just cars and the flow of traffic. That affects how much energy we use and how we interact with each other in our communities. If our street is set up so that there's no place to cross it and heavy traffic is flowing, there's no way for residents to cross the street to walk their children to school. That healthier option is taken away from them. So how our communities are built and maintained have a direct effect on how much energy, how many resources each of us has to use when we go about our daily lives. And it also affects the quality of our life, whether or not we have open spaces to use as a public to gather together, whether we have parks or sidewalks that are accessible for people using wheelchairs or strollers. If your community is not walkable, if it's not safe to ride a bike, or if there's no reliable public transportation, you're essentially forced to drive a car to get to work, to go to school, to go grocery shopping, even to go to church. And that's expensive on a family budget level, and it means that a lot of resources go into getting you around, and that more energy is going into the environment as you're combusting these gasoline and everything. So here in the design of your neighborhood, in your local city code, we have the overlap between social justice, environmental concerns, personal economic considerations, and local city planning. What we do on the local level matters, and we have the opportunity to make the most immediate and meaningful changes in the places that we live. So, how do you change your city? You do it very, very slowly. First, you show up, and a lot of it's meetings, and a lot of them are boring and are only tangentially related to the thing that you care most about. But you go and you get to know people. You volunteer in your neighborhood. You get to know your elected officials. You get to know the city staff, the people on public works and parks and rec, and the planning committee. As you volunteer, not just on your issue, you're developing these relationships with people who are able to make decisions and to implement the decisions. Now, volunteering takes time, and not everyone has the luxury of that time or the freedom to give their time. If you don't have the time, and frankly, a lot of us don't, try to keep in the know and support and encourage the people who are doing the work that you want to have done in your community. So that's the next thing, is to be informed. Now, when I served as the neighborhood chair in my neighborhood here in Provo, I learned that most neighbors did not want to actually come to the meetings. They didn't even want to know what happened or bother to read the emails that summarized the reports and the meetings that we'd gone to. What they wanted was to be able to just take everything for granted, to know that somebody else knew what was going on and that they could go to them and complain whenever they were unhappy. Complaining ends up being a big part of the communication that I received. Most of it's not well informed. It's based on speculation or suspicion, inadequate information, or faulty premises. And a lot of times these complaints could not be resolved with more information. But a lot of times we feel that complaining is the only thing we can do, because if you do take time to get informed and propose a rational solution to a problem you have, say you want a speed bump because cars are going too fast and it's not safe for kids, you get dismissed out of hand. It can be very hard to get citizens' suggestions to be taken seriously or considered by anyone who has the authority to make change. Because usually it's not just one person you need to convince, it's many people in many different departments. It takes being well educated on the issue and being patient and persistent. You have to work to educate yourself and then your officials and other decision makers. And this is a very gradual process. You have to have a big picture in mind, but you work in incremental steps. Yesterday, I was riding my bike to work. This is about a 3-mile ride. And I realized as I was riding up that the entire route that I was going had painted bike markings, and that there were 3 intersections that included a bike signal. When I moved here 11 years ago, none of that existed. There were not bike markings on the street. There were not intersections where a bike would signal it just by riding up. Slowly, gradually, through persistent effort, our bike community has managed to strengthen this infrastructure. And since we've done that, I've been able to see more families riding bikes on our quiet city streets than I did 10 years ago. I see commuters on bikes, scooters, hoverboards, going by my house all the time because I live by one of these intersections. This change has happened, and it's still happening. The infrastructure that we've been able to build has made it possible for people to feel safer biking in our city. And as people feel safer, more people are riding their bikes. And as more people ride their bikes, the city feels justified in building additional infrastructure, in painting more of these bike lanes and so on. And we still have to advocate for it. We still have to push and make sure that our projects don't get lost. But now we can point to the results in our own community instead of just pointing to the examples of other cities. It was harder first when there was much less. We had to have vision and we had to communicate that. The best way to do this, I think, is to maybe find a good role model, somebody who's already working in your community and doing this. Here in Provo, we've got Don Jarvis, who's a retiree who has been working for years with great energy on sustainability and natural resources. And I got to work with him on the sustainability committee for several years. And he does not stop. Aaron Scablin works with the Provo Bike Committee. This started as a committee that advised the city government, and now it's the own nonprofit Provo Bike, or Bike Walk Provo. All of these things have grown and developed and have been spaces, or these people have created space for more people to come in and learn and advocate. And as we've advocated here, our city has gotten better. And as you spend time volunteering and working, you become trusted as somebody who knows what's going on. And when your city official, say your mayor, is interested in doing a project that will impact your neighborhood, they'll talk to you about it. So by doing this slow work of building your voice and volunteering and putting in the time, you're able to have influence. And with that, you can shape your community. You can work to change the way cities are planned, or your city is planned, so that it is more friendly for families, and that will help it to be better for the environment. All right, that's my spiel.
Thanks so much, Rachel. We have a few questions that have come in from our listeners, and I'm going to start with one. And I think this is a really common question people have. So how do you approach people who have different opinions to make progress on efforts to address and mitigate climate change? Let me send that one to you, Tom, first.
Great question, and taking it to the small things that make great things happen. I'd probably initiate a conversation about their own home and see what kind of energy use that they have, and try to illustrate a couple ways where they could maybe save $10 a month, and want to draw again the economic extrapolation from economic savings to what that's actually going to mean. So the conversation starts it all begins at home. And from there, then identifying the values that they may have in other regards, whether it be the local air quality or job creation, et cetera, et cetera. So looking for common ground, but when you take it to, analyzing what somebody's home energy use is and look for ways to help them reduce that and save some money, it's a good place to start the conversation.
Thanks, Tom. That kind of goes back to what the congressmen were talking about earlier today as well, just going down to the base values. Rachel, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, when I'm talking to somebody who has very different things, you just start from the place where you've got commonalities. So here in Provo, I know a lot of people are not supportive of bike infrastructure. They think it's silly and it slows down cars. And but if you talk about your kids and the kids being able to ride their bikes, to play with their friends, that's a pretty common thing that everybody wants to have. So talking about supporting families and communities, and then they can start to see how this can help that instead of only cause what they see as a harm. It's just about finding areas where you can build together and support their interests that they share with you.